So hi, everybody. This is a random time we have together before we are, hold on a minute. I'm sorry, everybody.
You're live.
I know we're live, but I lost Zoom. So, okay, what can I say? I have no idea where I am or what I'm doing. I'm sitting in a motel in with my daughter and her dog, headed up the mountain to go up to run 9,000 feet up the mountain. So I was on the call. I was watching the news yesterday, and something struck me that I wanted to really start the call with today, and just, leave it to each of us to whatever comes up for us, just kind of a casual, or maybe we'll go for casual and we'll see what happens. But it was a half-hour show about how to survive the holidays, and about how to be with the relative you didn't want to be with, how to go crash shopping at the last minute and not become stressed out. And by the time I got done, well, I only watched 5 minutes of it, but by the time I got done 5 minutes of it, I thought, wow, if I wasn't stressed out about the holidays, I am now. And so it brought me kind of up straight in my seat, like, wow. Like for me, my kids and I don't spend the holidays together. It's one of their vacation times. My son goes skiing, my daughter goes bike riding by herself down Baja. And it's always been my meditative time, but I love driving around, seeing all the decorations. This year I'm actually going to decorate because I found some incredible hot chili lights to put on my windows. And so I just thought we'd throw it out as being in your presence and being in your company and being in each other's company, because we actually adore each other, and just really chat about not how do we survive, or not even how do we intentionally thrive in order to survive. I think that's the new modality, thrive in order to survive. But actually, what does delight us about this period of time, and what is fun for us. So somebody else start talking, because I've got to find my other screen. Okay.
Well, one of the joys that I have is I'm with two grandkids every day. And my granddaughter, who's 9, loves Christmas decorations, loves Christmas lights, and just her enthusiasm and her like, oh, I love this. And I'm thinking how at a 9 years old, how much of you is formed and your ideas and what you love, and they can articulate well. Anyway, it's really joyful. I get happier being with her as she enjoys the decorations and the Christmas stuff. So.
For me, Christmas is my favorite time of year because there's magic there. Years and years ago, Macy's put out this adorable Santa, and I think he's holding a sign or something that says "Believe." And so years and years ago, I started collecting Santas. So I have this whole collection, and every year I take it out to put it on the hutch that I helped build, and now the collection's morphed into a gnome family, and so I love the magical time, with all the lights and the colors, and the being with family. And so I've started many traditions that we hold dear in our family. And my girls, if I leave one out, they get very disappointed. And, they're grown now. So we love to go around and look at the lights. In fact, that's what we're doing on Christmas Eve. There's a walking tour we're going to do. and people have spent so much of their time and devotion to creating beautiful displays for people. So this is just, for us, it's a wonderful gathering time. And I feel so very grateful that my family embraces this aspect. And the core family that's left, my parents have passed on. I'm the one in the family that really holds this value of the magic of, the magic of believing. So it's a lot of fun.
Part of what's really speaking to me right now is just is taking it minute by minute, and the some of the coaching work that Tantra and I have been doing in a system called Positive Intelligence is really about sort of being able to choose where your brain's putting it. And so for me, in the midst of many things I'm trying to do, it's taking a minute to just be present to whatever I'm feeling, really, whether it's quote unquote positive or negative or whatever, but to really try to respect the fullness of the human condition. And we were all having a conversation Wednesday, in part to prepare for our conversation today. And Liz was mentioning this couple that she had the opportunity to be in the presence of, and how they were whole. She experienced them as being whole in a very profound way. And so I was thinking a lot about that this morning, and realizing that for me, part of my journey has been to realize that that wholeness doesn't mean I'm happy all the time. And I think, for some of us, we have sort of a programming that is not always useful for us, that says we have to be happy all the time. But to realize that wholeness is allowing myself to be however I am. And there are things in this world that make me sad, and I think it's reasonable that they make me sad. So allowing myself to be with the sadness, or as the Irish would say, to have sadness upon me, or to have joy upon me, or to have wonder upon me, or awe. But giving myself a little bit more space to just be in the fullness of my human condition I think is the thing that's really keeping me going right now.
I want to jump in on that, even though I've spoken already, because my son called me. He said, "Mom, I'm running out the door. I need one line about your condition." And I said, "I'm bored and love my life." And bored is actually genuine for me. I just finished 59 years of work. 59 years of work. I am now studying to coach. I hate studying. It's boring. And but one of the cool things about it is, over the years, in the field of Tantra, we've developed community all over the world. I mean, we have places we can go visit someone all over the world. In fact, Dr. Heather Hunt, DC, met Mark in Paris for coffee. And so it started a kind of a tradition without meaning to, and I think one of Liz's best friends met another person in Switzerland, right? And so it was so much fun, because Victoria now lives in Albuquerque and sees my housemate. And I've been having so much fun just planning to go to Avatar together on Monday. And that's not boring. And so it's interesting at 76 to be bored. It's like, almost like you said, Janice, there's almost something, wow, I can't remember being bored. I can't remember. It's almost like sweet, bitter fruit, and I do think there's something about being in a coherent field of a shared community that gives us room for everything. It also seems to have a less shelf life. Like we can move around a bit, not get, and when we are stuck, we got plenty of people to hold us. So I think my theme for the Christmas season is just to either hold people or find people to hold them. I'm going to make little teeny cookies. I'm a terrible cook, by the way, before we go any further. But I'm going to make little teeny cookies and bag them and take them. We have loads of homeless about 2 blocks from us. And I'm going to get little trees for them and candy canes. And I'm so excited about that. But it's not like charity. It's like they're part of my family. They're part of my neighborhood. And I want to celebrate their existence. So you just pinged me, too bad. Sorry, everybody, I had to pop in a minute. Over to whoever.
Well,
Yeah,
I want to pop in real quick too, because of what Janice said. I do want to make clear that I was in such awe of this couple because they were all of it. Like you said, they included the sadness and the frustration and the unworkability and just, you know, it's the turning lemons to lemonade. So they were great models for being able to be in all of it and do it together. I mean, that just brought me to my knees almost. So appreciate your bringing that up. Okay, now I'm good.
Well, one of the things when Janice talked about sadness, I just had this fleeting thing thinking, I have this picture on my wall of a Christmas picture of my entire family when my son was like 9 and my daughter was like 6. And all of a sudden I said, I'm going to be like my parents are in the picture, and my memories of them are integral to what Christmas is. And the traditions they started and then I started thinking about that's going to be true for my grandchildren too, that what I do with them today and this year is the tradition, but someday I'll be the picture on the wall and they'll remember. And there's that ongoing, and I guess that's the beautiful thing about the holiday season, is that it is the same and it's different. It's like, you know, we can remember when we were kids, like I remember waiting for Santa, you know, and getting up for the, you know, and getting up and getting presents and all that stuff. And it's really nice being a grandmother, giving, you know, I'm not part of their morning, wake up and see Santa, but I am part of their day. One of the things too that I started that is new, so my parents didn't do it, was I have what I call a winter solstice celebration. And I always wanted to, I like the winter solstice. It's kind of the original celebration. And the reason I have a party is to celebrate with all those people who don't celebrate Christmas. So whether they're Jewish or Hindu or pagan or whatever, we have a place to gather, because the original idea about, how people used to celebrate the winter solstice was they got together and they said, well, let's share food. Let's light candles. Let's have a bonfire. And let's really be happy that it's going to get warmer instead of these cold days. And that was the origin way back. So like my daughter's in-laws are Hindu. And so we go and we celebrate the Festival of Lights. And that was in November. And my sister-in-law is Jewish. And we used to always have something having to do with a menorah and Hanukkah around the holiday season, because that was something that she was teaching her children. And it's like that wholeness idea that we've got to hold all of us, and whatever way people have, whatever faith tradition has been important for them, we all honor it, but we honor more the human family. And saying, here we are, just like Tantra wants to go and give cookies to the homeless because they're her family. and you got to do something with family. and I think that's a big deal. If I'm, like we have a potluck here in our building and was supposed to be tonight, but we decided to move it to Friday, to the 23rd, so that everybody in the building who didn't have anybody to be with for Christmas could have a Christmas dinner on the 23rd. So it's all about strengthening the ties between each other and thanking each other for being part of our lives. That's, to me, is like the most core part of it. Next.
That's just so rich and just so much, so important. So important. I love the creativity that I'm hearing being discussed, of everybody's approach to celebrating in this season. And gosh, it's wonderful to hear. In my family, because it's kind of just us now. My parents are gone too, and so forth and so on. And my kids are adult, but Christmas is my daughter's favorite. Halloween's closed, but she loves Christmas. So we just really, for me, it's a lot about letting her have how she would express. Because I love watching her do that, and her son finding their ways of really honoring the season and the spirituality of loving humanity, and loving that, in our tradition, that I think it's true for a lot of them anyway, that Christmas is a recognition of humanity growing and changing and being renewed and coming into its own inch by inch, just like it's the original, the solstice time was, the seasons are about to renew. We're about to come out from the dark and into the light. And it's just remarkable to allow the creativity and to be able to not have to flow with expectations of this is how it's done, which was a little more what it was like in my growing up. Christmas was wonderful, and there was a lot of, this is how one does a holiday. And the freedom to just morph it, however, is, I think last year I would have thought of it as a luxury. And now, listening to you all, I'm realizing it's not really a luxury. It's just plain living. It's just plain expressing. It's wonderful listening to you all. This year I've had a lot more attention on, people who are having trouble paying their heat bills and, the difficult side of things. But I notice it's not bringing me down. It's just paying attention and being in, like you said, Janice, being present to what I'm feeling, present to what I'm present to, and what am I able to do about this, if anything. And there's always something, even prayer. And just to be part some different ways of uplifting humanity and uplifting myself and honoring myself as part of humanity, my daughter, my grandson. And my grandson is right in the age of figuring out his connection to the magic of the season. And that's a lot of fun. And testing out, I don't know why he's been shy about that, but he's been testing out, how are the grownups around me going to respond? Do they see the magic still too? And it's been a really interesting, because none of us we're not quiet in this household. We're not shy. We're not unexpressed. We're not we're very clearly believers in magic and hope and love and self-expression. So, but it's been interesting to see him testing out, what's our caliber? Do we measure up in that regard? So it's really been a very interesting, magical time in terms of, passing it on as well for us this year, for me this year, watching them engage and set up the house. And, I've got a few decorations that, nope, these have to go up somewhere, which is fine. And we've got a Yoda, the baby Yoda from that show. And this year it's his turn to wear the Santa hat. Last year was, forgot his name. The wizard from Harry Potter. Sorry. Last year was his turn to wear the Santa hat. And, so we've got, those are kind of traditions too. Who's going to wear the Santa hat this year? And who's just those kinds of decorations that represent all the kinds of things that people have been talking about here. It's really something.
Yeah, and the thing is, I feel like those are choices that we make, and I mean that in a in an empowering way, right? Because I mean, one of the things that is true about the human condition is how much choice we really have. And I know for me, when I'm in a bad way, when I'm in my sort of worst ways, I guess you could say, it's when I have told myself that I don't have choice about something. And for me, getting my feet back under me is often about looking and seeing where are the choices, where is the room for the choices, and what can I really reclaim. And I feel like, and for me, like a lot of us here, I know I had sort of a period of transition out of being a religious person into, before I really got my spirituality grounded in me. And it's sort of this empty place because you don't necessarily, you're sort of rejecting some of the beliefs and traditions and things that you've been a part of, and you don't necessarily have anything to fill the void. And so, I think those rituals that we create for ourselves are really, really important for us as humans. And I think it is part of how we move with our humanity, is to say, okay, well, no matter what's going on, every year I get to pull these guys out and decide who gets to wear the Santa hat, and it's very grounding, I find. I have a nativity scene that's all animals, because most days I definitely would choose animals over people. So Mary and Joseph and little baby Jesus are bears, and but that's my favorite thing every year is getting that out and putting that out. And because to me, it just connects me in with the power of the mother. And I've been leaving it up longer and longer and longer. And so now I justify to myself that it stays up till spring comes. That's just it. That's how it is. But because it feeds me looking at them every morning when I wake up, because it's across from my bed, it feeds me. So, and that's a choice that I can make as I move through my life.
I want to tag on that too, because I think we get so busy as human beings, we get tunnel focused on what works, what doesn't work, what's good, what's bad, and nothing's wrong with that. The thing that's so amazing about this particular season is why they started to begin with. Hanukkah started because wasn't always real. Like the winter solstice is the oldest tradition. And then the Festival of Lights is the next oldest in the Hindu tradition. But then in the Jewish tradition, Hanukkah was because they've been slaves for years, for centuries. And they could reclaim their home. And they could reclaim their sacred site, their temple, that had been lost to them, something highly representative of their faith in their God. Deeply, deeply, profoundly meaningful. And then the oldest tradition was that the sun was being reborn. And I think what Jen, as you said about choice, I think our little noggin is mentally weary. But if we think of choice as, where can I start my rebirth? Where can the sun shine again? Where can I light a candle on my own behalf? I think there's two very big wearinesses going on. One is the weariness of keeping our feet up under us in the amount of change that our world is going through, and just a general world fatigue we're all in, for a lot of us, and a lot of us, aren't making it on caffeine, and a lot of us aren't making it on stress anymore. But then the whole idea of the Christ said something simple, which we've been talking about this whole time in regular terms: love thy neighbor as thyself, and no more self-sacrifice. So I just couldn't get over listening to you all talk, and I thought, wow, this is where we find light again. This is where we honor death, we honor life, we honor what's leaving and what's coming, and it's really, I think the reason I'm saying this is I think these larger knowings about why we're even gathering during this time is really important to realize. In truth, we have carried it on. We have carried on the tradition of Diwali and all because of their meaning. It's all about celebrating the goodness. Diwali is all about celebrating the goodness, good food, good company, good times, just for a moment, and before we dive back into the trash, and before we get pulled down by things that are hard to take. And so I think it's incredible. The holiday spirit is far more, is there in every tradition. Is what I want to make sure is present, and each of us have a way to honor it in our own manner.
I had the chance this week to go to a dance performance created by an adult company called by Cleo Parker. It's 50-year-old company led by a Black woman, and variety of races in the company. Beautiful dancers. But what they did was they created something called Granny Dancing Around the World. And it was dances from all the celebrations from the different cultures of, and they had, I was invited as an old lady to watch this, but it was mainly for kids. And there must have been like 100 school kids in this auditorium. One of the thoughts I had was, oh my God, all the germs. But what they did was they had the kids do hand movements and sing along, and they did a story. So it was like two characters going like, oh, Granny's so old, she taught us the dances and we don't remember. And then of course they would move in, and they would, they had the Jewish dance and the Christian dance and the Irish dance and the African dance. But it was such a wonder. I was struck by two things. One, we all are fed by children's joy and children's innocence. And the other thing was they made a point of showing the variety of ways that people celebrate this season. So it wasn't just a Christian support. I mean, they had the Jewish dancing, they had everything. And that is one of the things that really touches me, is when someone said, there was that hoo-ha about saying happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas. And I read something that said, when somebody says happy holidays, that is a sign of respect, because there are over 14 traditions that are celebrated at this time of year around the world. And when we say happy holidays, we're respecting all of them instead of just one. But that struck me, that performance just really, the human heart is so good. And it takes this time of the year to say we care, we honor, we love. It's just really cool.
Very cool. Deb,
Okay, I'm in.
Santa Claus captured Deb, so she'll be back soon. I'm sure she's playing with the reindeer.
All right, I'm in here now.
I told them
got it.
that Santa Claus captured you, Deb, and that you were probably playing with the reindeer. So welcome back. Victoria's about to chat.
I want to be a good dancer first. I have a
Victoria, we're not hearing you.
sorry. I want to be a granny dancer first. I have a different story in my life of the Christmas season. I grew up in the normal tradition of Christmas and family and lots of siblings and all of the wonder and all of that. And then when I became a young mom, I went through my divorce at that time, and I marked the time when my son was 5 years old that I sent him on an airplane from Arizona to Colorado to be with his dad for the holiday, and I spent the holiday alone. And from that moment in time, I learned what it meant to be resilient through the holidays, how to be alone and find not only my own inner strength and connection, I might cry, but also to find that family is way beyond what I thought family was for me. That I wasn't necessarily raised in a religious family. I was pulled out of a church because they were trying to get my parents to go. And they said, we don't go to church, but we want you to have the story. So we got pulled out when they were harassing my parents through their kids. So when I was in my 20s and spending Christmas alone that year, I went to a local church on Christmas Eve so that it was my way of having resilience, that I could be up late, and I knew I wouldn't sleep very well that night, not having my son, at least with me. And I found a connection to a lot of other people that go to the church on Christmas Eve for the midnight whatever ceremony, whichever church you're going to, they just call it different names, right? I didn't know anybody. I didn't really interact with anybody necessarily, but I found a place in myself where I could honor that there's more to what Christmas is than being with my original family or my current family that I reside with, that I'm part of the human family. And it gave me that thread. And through my lifetime, it's like what you said, Janice, it's a choice. How I am every year for the holiday season is a choice. I did the choice of moving into my now husband's family, and they were just over the top. And I would spend way more than I was comfortable spending because everybody had to buy everybody presents. And it was like a big ass free for all. And I was like, this is too much. I was stressed out and system overload at the end, and I just wanted everybody to leave my home. And so after I don't know how many years of that, I just told Tim, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not buying everybody everything. And he had to inform the family, and it changed the tradition. We only picked one person. And I went, well, okay, this is better. It wasn't chaos. And we started spending money going out to meals and doing things together. So we did that for a while. And then when we all reconfigured, not living in the same location anymore, and the kids were growing up, we didn't get together. So Tim and I spent a number of years, just the two of us, because all the kids were gone. And I created a tradition of I would cook a solstice dinner for 10 people. So we would always have 12 present at our table. And I said, nobody gets to bring anything. This is my gratitude for the year. Please come. And I would cook international meals from different traditions. And I would play, because I love to play in the kitchen. And I love to bake cookies. So I'm happy to help you with that. So I did that until I moved into the forest in Ohio. And nobody was going to drive an hour and a half for a meal and then an hour and a half home, right? So that one went away, and Tim and I were alone at the holidays. I chose to do that because I could have flown somewhere, but I didn't want to do the big free-for-all stuff anymore. I was like, I'm done. And so now I moved to Albuquerque, and I'm like, what do we choose this year? Because we have the capacity to go to see his daughters. They're only a day's drive, right? So I gave my husband the freedom to choose this year if he wanted to go and be with them or just stay here. And it took him a bit to be in the system that I'm going to support him and it's okay to go. It's okay to go. And so we're going for a few days and then we're going to be quiet. And I get to celebrate my solstice here in some way that I honor, because that's like the deep part of the season for me is solstice. And he gets to be with his family, which I know is important right now. Right. So I have this like whole mixed bag of what Christmas is and isn't, that everybody else has kind of more traditional ways. And I love that there's tradition. And I think I'm in a new tradition all over again. So that's my story.
You know, I know what you mean by learning how to celebrate Christmas alone, because I raised my kids and they had choice over celebrating tradition or not. And they didn't want to. But my daughter celebrates Halloween at a level that would put us all to shame. Jesus, Louise. Try going to an LBJQ Halloween party. It is probably the best festival in town. And Kevin, the 80-pound puppy, wears a unicorn hat. So, but the part that one of the funny things I would tell you were talking about, I forgot about it. So it's, you know, I'm called mother. Mother does that. And the thing is, I don't buy gifts unless I want to buy them for them. So sometimes the kids said no gifts for Christmas whatsoever. But July 14th, Leona and Aaron got gifts, and they text each other and said, wow, we got our Christmas gifts from mom, because they were exactly what I wanted them to have at that time. And I say, Merry Christmas. And now I have grandchildren I didn't know I had. And while we were sitting here talking, I said, okay, I'm going to do a Zoom recording. I'm going to talk to the grandkids, and I'm going to ask them how they want me to celebrate them for Christmas, and to let me know what matters to them for Christmas. And I don't know, I got something out of this call. I got creative, and yes, let's make cookies before or after you get back. That'd be great. I'll go to Michael's, get a whole bunch of little bags, and we can just make lovely things for our people in the tents down the road. Thank you. And thank you for having Christmases alone. Not that I think that's great, but I think we don't realize how many people do. And there's more than ever. And, let's just find ways.
Yeah.
And that even if you are alone, you don't have to be lonely, because you're never really alone, because we're part of everything. And that's what I learned that day.
Well,
That-
being lonely is also part of not being alone. You know, when I say, you know, my son, because I've always lived with people, always. And I've lived in community. Well, God, forever, Deb and I were part of community. And I'm very private in community. I mean, I'm not social, but not having community, my heart family, I'm really lonely. But as my son Aaron once said, because I traveled all the time, he said, Mom, my heart hurts when you're gone. And I said, oh, Aaron, I'm so sorry. And he said, he looked at me like I was insane. He said, why are you sorry? I wouldn't know how much I love you if my heart didn't hurt. And that lonely is our love for humanity. And I think we undermine ourselves, like we aren't supposed to be lonely. We're supposed to be happy without people. And sometimes we are, and sometimes we aren't. And God, may we never lose that loneliness for another and that craving, because without it, I'm pretty sure we'd all be with our reality masks on, living in a virtual world with connection to no one. And the purpose of being here is in each other's company from time to time. Anyway, yeah. Deb?
I'm just really, because the switch from tradition to what was life enhancing happened for me a few years back. And that's what I'm hearing in everybody's speaking, is the ability to change, to shift the external activity to reflect, you know, whatever's really life enhancing, and how much humanity's been doing that over all the millennia. You know, when you're listing out the different things you engage with and pay attention to, Electra, it made me go worldwide in my thinking while we're together. And people have been finding ways to celebrate with each other, to take life beyond the chop wood, carry water, or the difficulties of the day, given whatever war or plague or, you know, whatever was going on throughout history, and celebrate life. And it's never gone. Celebrating life and the function of choice that we've all been kind of presencing here, even being alone, there's a lot of choice, and some may prefer it. It's life enhancing for them for that moment, but that we're never stuck in, or we don't have to be stuck in, there's only one way to express our connection to self, life, others, spirit. I'm just astonished. I'm astonished. I hadn't really moved out beyond my own little thinking around the holidays until this conversation, and just how amazing it is that human beings never lose that. It's just really beautiful.
I wonder if there's a connection between choice and celebration. I don't know. It just seems like there's got to be something about that. I never put them together, but I just rented a tiny home away from my home to be with my daughter. I definitely chose that, and away from my own world. But it was also definitely to celebrate her existence and celebrate her love of her 80-pound puppy, and to celebrate the choices she made to go to the border and help people out there. So maybe choice and celebrate have a connection I never thought of. I'm going to take that as my gift from this call.
Well, there were a lot of years when I was raising my kids that I didn't feel there was a lot of choice around what I did. The kids expected stuff. There was a role I played in the family. We had a huge family. So there was always like 20 people was a small group. And we would have 30 or more people for the holiday. And my job was to work with mom in the kitchen. So all day Christmas or all day Thanksgiving, I cooked, and I have strong memories of being exhausted at the end of that day. And just really thankful that it was wonderful being there, and it was just exhausting. So I remember I moved myself to Hawaii when at one point after my kids were grown. And I remember the first Christmas that all I had to do was answer Christmas calls. And then I got to watch Christmas movies all day. And I thought, this is great. So, and it's I don't think I thought I had a lot of choice in those years, other than how do I help my mom out? And how do I give the kids what will make them happy? But there wasn't a whole lot of what would keep me from being exhausted. So anyway, it's really nice not having to do that all day anymore.
And that's, I mean, two of the coaching systems that we have been exploring, both Newfield and Positive Intelligence. A lot of what they try to do is bring people into awareness of their programming, and to be able to be at choice about whether or not you want to continue operating under that programming, or whether you want to, write a different story for yourself. And I do think, in many traditions, it is the women that do the bulk of the physical and the emotional labor of bringing holidays forward. And I think it's very interesting to see all the ways that is up for renegotiation. And I think rightly so, and families who are choosing different ways forward, and groups of friends who are choosing different ways forward. Because I think that's, back to what you were saying, Tantra, I think celebration as an etheric nature of being is a choice. I definitely think choice and celebration are linked. And I was listening to a PQ focus this morning, the Positive Intelligence focus, and it was talking about when things come up that you're not happy about, that you have a choice to accept or convert, accept that this is what is happening and make peace with it, or look for a way to convert it into a gift, which is sort of one of the foundational principles of the Positive Intelligence system. I remember probably the toughest Christmas I ever spent was I think it might have been the second one after I moved to Florida, and just life was not necessarily very happy for me. But so I chose to extract myself from my family celebration early so that I could go and spend the rest of the day at the Dolphin Hospital where I was volunteering. And one of the tasks of monitoring the dolphins that were in recovery was that 5 minutes of every hour, you just sat there by the tank with a notebook, and you tracked their breaths, because the pace of their breathing was one of the things that would indicate their level of recovery. So you would write down every time for the 5 minutes. And I loved doing that, just because that in itself is quite the meditative experience. But that was also, it was a pretty radical choice for me, because holidays and family had always been inextricably linked, and the idea of making a choice to be elsewhere was significant. But it was but it was what I needed in that moment. And that was a way of honoring and celebrating who I was as a person and my nature of being. And so I do think that choice and celebration are inextricably linked, and that I do think that part of what this season is about is bringing us back to what do we choose to celebrate? You know, even given all the cards that are on the table, where can we make choice to be in celebration?
Janice, say that again, the two things, the two words that you were just talking about. I think they're great words. Either reconstituted, or what was the word?
Accept or convert.
And talk a little bit about those two words.
So for instance, he used the
Or what you
example
got.
of when you're stuck in a traffic jam, right? You got to be somewhere, you're late for a meeting, but you're stuck in a traffic jam and there's no way. And having lived in DC much of my life, I remember times when all of a sudden a 20-minute drive turned into 2 hours and there was nothing I could do, right? And this was before cell phones. But so you're in that situation. So one thing you could do is just accept, okay, I'm going to be late for my meeting. That's how it is. Sun's probably still coming up tomorrow. So I'm just going to sit here and use this time to just, breathe deeply, or do my, rub my fingers together to do my PQ reps or whatever. But he also said you could look at it as an opportunity to convert. So if you're supposed to have a meeting, obviously there's other people who are to be a part of that meeting. And he said, perhaps you have a coworker who maybe is newer in the company, and you call that coworker and you say, I need you to kick off the meeting for me. And if that coworker is in a place of trying to maybe establish themselves in the company, then you've given them a leadership opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And so you're converting it into a gift for yourself, because you've not only found a way to manage the situation, but you've also gifted someone else with an opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise had.
Thanks. I also want to make sure, a lot of us come from history. All of us come from history. And it's actually pretty new in our world to have so many people considering that they have choice. It's really quite new. It's incredibly new. And I find it fascinating that one of the oldest traditions, when there was no thought of choice, and I mean, you were in the social caste you were born into in India, and that was all there was about that. If you were a peasant, you were a peasant, you couldn't be king. If you're a woman, then you did all the hard labor. And usually in the pioneering days, a man could go through 5 wives because they died in childbirth, and they died tasking. So choice is really new. But what I find fascinating is the one thing humanity always knew to survive no choice was times to celebrate. And I remember I was in I had forgotten this. God bless you all for your stories, because I'm almost ready to bawl. So I had a mammy. You're not supposed to say that anymore, but I did. I had a mammy. She was close to 6'5". She was a Watusi. She was royalty. And let me tell you, she never lost that stature. She was awesome. But what I would do was go to their church. I went to their church till I was 5 years old. And I remember, I don't have much memory about my babyhood, but boy, I remember that church. And when I got older, I'd go back, sneak back. And because it was definitely during, Black kids didn't go to school with white kids. But I remember this watching them. One of the members of this very small community had been hung and killed by a white Ku Klux Klan. And I wanted to go to church to weep with them, to cry with them. And they didn't. I mean, they cried, but they cried celebrating life, dancing, and singing and praising life and praising the Lord and praising that they had this man with them that period of time they've been with them. And just what we were sitting here talking about, maybe there's a reverence now, maybe what we can provide with each other. We're not talking about just the six of us, we're talking about all of us on this time together, and all of us that watch it later. Maybe what it could be a real gift, as our lovely Shahzad says, a really gift to consider that we finally might have choice. That maybe choice is new on the block as a cultural response, and it can look like activism, it can look like resentment, it can look like even betrayal. But I do think that the underpinnings of choice are finally rising in far more people, definitely in our young people, for sure. And you know, I'm grateful that I knew early to give my kids the power of choice, insisted on it, as a matter of fact. And but they're considered very radical. My daughter's considered extremely radical. My daughter is extremely radical. But at the very same time, I think that's what I want to foster and cherish is this power of choice, and this power of choiceless choice, which is when in your circumstances you have no choice, but in your heart you have all choice. And that's for sure. I know it's just a good reflection, just a good reflection. So let's just go around and do an adieu for people. I love doing CreateAWorld with these women. I adore and cherish, and I love being in your company. It's over to you, Janice, and then you call in the next person.
And thank you for those of you that are out there watching now or listening later, because one of the things that's true about story is story needs to be heard. So we have this conversation, we can bring forth this conversation because you're willing to listen. So I'm tremendously grateful for that. Liz, over to you.
I love the statement about the power of choice, and how, you know, we each and every moment we have the power of how, even if we feel we are in choice, we have the power of seeing and feeling differently. So I really appreciate that. Over to you, Victoria.
I celebrate your daughter's being radical and that choice that she made. I'm excited for a day that I'm going to choose to play in irreverent, non-traditional Christmas, just like I did at Thanksgiving, and just to have a moment where I just do something totally different during the Christmas season than I would traditionally do, and I just want to like tamales for dinner or something, you know, and start a new tradition through making Christmas even more expansive. So over to you, Deb.
Personally, I'm just going to really revel in just revel in how my daughter is coming into her own. And she's not radical, probably never will be, but in terms of coming into her own, and my grandson being so sturdy in that, and what that kind of vibrates out into the world, you know, that's really something. And in terms of what's been presenced here on the call, I'm just so grateful to be opened up into so many different ways of looking at celebrating. I hadn't closed my mind off to it. I wasn't ignorant of it, but this is so refreshing to be opened up into the diversity of celebration and how deeply rooted it is in our humanity. So for me, being on this call is like getting to celebrate with all of you who are watching or will watch later. So thank you.
And just being here together is wonderful. We belong to a group of people that share on a regular basis. And what I realized during this last part of the call was how important where we come from in our heart is. Because no matter whether I'm alone or I don't have any money, or, I'm one of 40 people and, you get lost in the crowd, how I hold it in my heart is the most important thing. So no matter the circumstances that may look hard from the outside, as long as I've got to make the choice in my heart to make it something that's nurtures me and nourishes me, then that's what the season's about. That's what friendship is about. And I'll just say, being with others, even if you go, I used to go and visit a church like Victoria did, just to be with others, to be in the